arriving at Buckingham Palace.
I know, how about that?
And on behalf of the King, Sir Keir Starmer is welcomed into the King's Door of Buckingham Palace by the Equerry and Sir Clive Alderton. They'll go to Sir Clive's office initially. It's a few minutes before 12 o'clock. I would imagine that the King's audience will start at 12, but I expect that there will be a chance for Sir Keir, who is going to be playing his part, to talk with the private secretary first.
His wife Victoria, of course, accompanying him. And I have to say, I think there was probably a bit of a statement in that very modest vehicle bringing him into the grandeur of Buckingham Palace.
Just to say thank you to all of you who've been watching on Sky Showcase. We will continue our full coverage of the election results on Sky News as we wait for Sir Keir Starmer to meet the King. He has just arrived at Buckingham Palace.
I know, how about that?
It is 12 o'clock and Sir Keir Starmer has just entered Buckingham Palace, where he will meet the King, and when he leaves this building, he will have become the 58th Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. He will make that trip to Downing Street, he will form the next government, and he is expected to address the nation shortly on the steps of number 10 after winning a landslide majority for the Labour Party. If you're just joining us, these were the seat totals: 412 seats for the Labour Party, just shy of that historic majority in 1997. The Conservatives losing more seats than in any other election since the party was formed. And that's why behind that door later on, it will be Sir Keir Starmer who's forming the next government. The man with the mandate, the man with the majority, although, of course, it was on a relatively low vote share. Not that they care, the people who are waiting to hear the speech from the next Prime Minister.
So for Sir Keir, who is now with Sir Clive Alderton waiting for the King to call for Sir Keir to come up for an audience. Of course, it's quite special because the equerry who will take him, we saw him in naval uniform welcoming on behalf of the King, for Lieutenant Commander Will Thornton. He will go to the King's door at the audience room and he'll walk in and say, "Sir Keir Starmer, Your Majesty," and then let Sir Keir go in. The door will close. And when Sir Keir comes out, he will be able to say, "Congratulations, Prime Minister," as the first person who can do it. It's always been a tradition for the equerry that should be very special. And this is obviously another page in history. For the Labour Party, it's significant because the King's great-grandfather, King George V, in 1924, exactly 100 years ago, sent for the first Labour Prime Minister in Ramsay MacDonald. It would have been a delight for Ramsay MacDonald to have the kind of majority that Sir Keir can present before the King today. Of course, poor old Ramsay MacDonald only had a minority government, but it was a significant moment because King George V had to allow the new Labour politicians to come and see him not in formal dress because they didn't have it. And of course, all those things seem ridiculous, but it was in its own way such a major moment culturally and socially for King George V in those days. And yet today there's a huge change again in the nation in the recognition of a change of will from the people. And the King is acting on all of our behalf by very shortly sending for his new Prime Minister. And of course, when Sir Keir goes into the King, after the usual charm and welcome and a few little jokes perhaps, just to set Sir Keir completely at his ease, the King will brace himself up and formally ask whether Sir Keir would be able to form an administration. The moment Sir Keir says yes, he becomes the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom and First Lord of the Treasury. And then the conversation will move on to, I believe, the choice of people for his cabinet. Ultimately, the King must approve of all of them, cabinet first and then the ministers, but also because a parliament is made up of a series of sessions, most of them lasting a year each with a state opening of parliament. The first session, we know, will have a state opening of parliament on the 17th of July. And for that, there will be a King's speech prepared. So this is a chance for Sir Keir to lay out to the King what he wants to do first in that first session of legislative change. And so I think it's a very interesting time for the King as head of state, representing all of us by keeping the nation and its history guiding forward, to have this chance to talk and to make that extraordinary invitation to form a government.
It is an extraordinary invitation, isn't it? And that's exactly the way to put it. It's an important relationship as well going forward, isn't it? I'm always struck by how every Prime Minister talks about their relationship with the monarch. How do you think that the King will get on with Keir Starmer? I remember Keir Starmer, of course, has spoken about wanting to abolish the monarchy in his younger days. I'm sure he doesn't hold that opinion anymore.
Well, people can hold whatever view they like. And that's the great thing about this democracy. There are plenty of people out there who are not happy that we are a monarchy and want something different. But, this is a time when that relationship between the head of state, the King, and the new head of government, when he is appointed Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, will be vital, because it is the only place Sir Keir will be able to go where he's not being challenged and requested for things. I think one of the truly treasuring things about the relationship that a Prime Minister has with the King is that the King has got nothing to gain from a Prime Minister, whereas a Prime Minister is the source of all patronage on behalf of the sovereign. And everyone who comes up to or who engages with the Prime Minister has their own agenda, their own desire. Even to get a photograph with him is taking something from the Prime Minister. But with the King, that is the only person that is not able to gain anything from a Prime Minister. And I think that creates a special relationship. And the fact that it's always in private is important. But also, once the formality is over, and I would imagine that Sir Keir is now with the King, and if I was a betting man, and I know none of us are allowed to be betting people now, I would imagine that the King will right now be posing that question. Would you be prepared to form a government? And in the instant, which none of us are flies on the wall to hear, that Sir Keir says yes, I imagine in this moment he is becoming the 58th Prime Minister of the United Kingdom.
It must be such an extraordinary moment to hear that question. I'm sure it's a question that he's thought about, perhaps never allowed himself to think about too much, just in case. We can go to Downing Street now, because we can see, Beth, lots of flags being waved, lots of cheering going on.
Yes, this is interesting, Sophie. You can see that flags of Scotland, a Union Jack, and the Welsh flag are all being dished out to the activists and the supporters and the party members. And the reason that this is interesting is that One of the themes when I've been talking to Starmer's team has been that they were very keen to win a majority in which they were governing for all three nations where they had fielded candidates. And what that meant was that they would, by seat numbers and vote share, be the biggest party in England, Scotland and Wales. Now, this last happened under, guess who?
That's it. Sir Keir Starmer, that historic picture, shaking hands with the King. He is now Prime Minister, the first day of the rest of his life. Only 57 people have ever experienced what he is going through before. You believe he's still there?
Yes, I think he will be, with Victoria meeting the King too, and then they will go down with Sir Clive Alderton, and there is so much for Sir Keir to do. In fact, Sam asked me between the period of the Prime Minister what would happen if anything came up. But what's interesting now, for the very short moment, the new Prime Minister has a cabinet who are all Conservatives, many of whom haven't yet stood down, and they will hand over their seals to the King very soon.
Well, we can now tell you that Sir Keir Starmer has now been formally appointed Prime Minister by the King. Meeting King Charles with his wife Victoria before, of course, he will get into that car and he will then travel to Downing Street, where he's expected to give his very first speech as Prime Minister.
So much on Sir Keir Starmer's agenda as we wait for him to depart the palace and head to Downing Street. I think the Labour team want to capture some of the exuberance of the moment, to project the joy that pretty much automatically should come with a majority that was on the scale of Tony Blair's in 1997, but also to show momentum, to show that they understand the message that millions of voters have sent them overnight in this general election. So appointments to the cabinet within hours. I think a sense that this is a government that's going to get on over the weekend, possibly a cabinet meeting as early as tomorrow, and agenda-setting items being announced on Sunday and into next week. Keir Starmer facing his first foreign trip to Washington on Tuesday evening to meet world leaders. He will also meet particularly European leaders 10 days after that. This period between now and the summer will be an absolute blitz. Keir Starmer's job right now, beginning as Prime Minister, will be to reintroduce himself to the British public. Here we have a leader since 2020 where somewhere in the region of 34% of the voting public have chosen him to be the United Kingdom's Prime Minister. But he needs to show what kind of Prime Minister he is, what his mettle is made of, how he will govern after a campaign that gave us some clues, but with this scale of a majority, this scale of ability and political flexibility to take the country where he wants. People now want to know what that looks like.
Just to reflect for a moment on the kind of human side of what we're seeing. Keir Starmer's just gone through a roller coaster night of results. He's, I'm sure, had absolutely no sleep at all, or just grabbed a couple of moments here and there. Coffee, he told me before, is his drink of the election. So I imagine he's had a few cups of that to keep him awake. And now, of course, that moment of stillness, of everything slowing down behind the gates of Buckingham Palace with his wife, Victoria, who, of course, she had quite a low profile during the campaign, other than the kind of Taylor Swift picture, but by the side of Sir Keir Starmer.
The footmen have come out to the Prime Ministerial car, and so very shortly the Prime Minister will appear with his wife, Lady Starmer, and he will return from the palace to number 10 Downing Street. And it's just a process of preparing for that departure. We always see the footmen come out first, but of course the Prime Minister will be escorted by the King's Private Secretary, Sir Clive Alderton, who will have been having a conversation right now about much that needs to be done. There's an enormous amount that needs to happen. It's function and process maybe, but the King is so much a part of it because what will be formed is His Majesty's new government. And so every appointment needs to pass by the King through the King's Private Secretary. So there are going to be many moments that the King has to take part in, not least every one of the existing Conservative Ministers and Secretaries of State will need to deliver up their seals of office to the King very shortly in order that the King can hand them physically to the new ministers and new Secretaries of State that maybe the King and the Prime Minister have already agreed to, but which will need to be agreed to before they can be presented. And then we will obviously hear that they've been appointed before that presentation. But it is a reminder that what we are witnessing is a constitutional process of change where the King has taken the clear indication of the national vote and the function of government is being passed from one administration to the next. So with the footman now being by the car, I imagine the final farewells, maybe some introductions by the private secretary to the other private secretaries of the King's team, because sometimes Sir Clive is not always available and other private secretaries look after the King's programme and they may well meet the new Prime Minister when he comes on his private audiences week after week with the King, either here at Buckingham Palace, sometimes it can be up in Scotland, as I was saying, at Balmoral, or wherever the King chooses and it's suitable for the Prime Minister. The King will always try and work to what is most suitable for his head of government.
I wonder if there is something of relief for the King. There has been undoubted constitutional turmoil now for years. We've seen changes of Prime Minister, uncertainty over Brexit. Now, at this point, with a majority, an impregnable majority in the Commons, and a Prime Minister who could well be there for 5 interrupted years, so different to the landscape, the political landscape that we've had for the last 5 years, I wonder whether the King is quietly pleased that the constitutional temperature, the political temperature, is coming down.
We watched the King at his coronation, and here comes the new Prime Minister. The Prime Minister of the United Kingdom making his way to the challenges that lie ahead with the authority given to him by the King. What we have witnessed at Buckingham Palace has been the head of state, His Majesty the King, taking from Rishi Sunak the authority of head of government and passing it in reflection of the nation's choice at the first general election of his reign to Sir Keir Starmer, who carries that forward. It has been a constitutional pause where the King has given effect to the national choice.